David?
Yes.
IBI.
Oh, I'm sorry. We are IBI Group. My name is David Yurtsin. I'm a planner, landscape architect, and Bankam Kaur is my partner. He's also a planner, and we're partnering on this project together. We are probably the fifth or sixth project similar to this that we've done together, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of experience doing that. We also have Patricia Ramuto's in the room. She's our
Patricia,
engineer.
can you please stand up? It's a really
Stand
nice,
up, please.
close,
Introduce
compact
yourself.
room.
There you go. Kevin Greiner, our economist, right in the front. And there's me. Is Harold here tonight?
No, Harold was
Harold's
not.
he's got
But-
Guy.
But we've got Guy from Seepco,
Yeah.
local firm, and Sandrine is not over here, but
Yeah. And Robert Gray is not here. If he were here, you would know he's here, believe me. He's not here.
so this is a drone shot of the area that we're talking about, just for you guys to look at it. If you can't see it, we'll turn off the lights. Can you see it properly? All right, that's good.
And this is an important shot because it shows the bend in 125th where it becomes 123rd. The new storage facility, of course, is off to the left. And the railroad corridor that you see crossing through, if there is to be a station, it would be somewhere inside this drone shot or just slightly outside, either north or south. So it's a critical part of our study. And mobility hubs.
Yes, so what we're calling this particular study is a mobility hub strategic plan, which is, we're not talking about just the transit. We're talking about mobility in general. How do you look at walking, cycling, taking the bus? It's not about just the FEC transit station, because that's not going to take you directly to your home. The station is going to drop you off at the station, and then you have to reach your home some way. So we're looking at how do we improve the first and last mile connectivity to the station and make it more easier for working, living, shopping, and everything happens in a compact fashion within that particular area. We're also talking about transit-oriented development. This is an image which will show you that you've got transit and you've got development. Mostly what happens is transit and development are separated from each other. You have transit and you've got development adjacent to it. Oriented is where the open spaces connect the transit and development.
It's kind of like field of dreams in planning. You build something and they come, and that's what happens. Development seems to follow the stations, and there's a reason for that, especially now with millennials who like to be a little bit closer into where they drive from or transit from, not necessarily for single cars anymore, but so development seems to follow that, and that's important.
And that's how it looks like.
And it's not always new development either. It's sometimes it's redevelopment. It's older buildings that are repurposed, that are redone on the inside and the outside, and then that's all the spaces around the outside too. So you tend to have a lot more pedestrian-oriented space because you have a lot of people walking in, walking out. You have buses, trains, cars, bicycles, and people walking.
And a lot more car sharing. We're looking at a lot of new modes that are coming in, the Ubers, the Lyfts, everything else. These are some of the better examples that have been successful. This is Vancouver in Yaletown District in Canada. The reason why we have that is because I lived in this building and I recently moved 6 months ago to South Florida. It's a big change. I need to tell you that. That's the disclaimer. It's a big change. But there's a lot of similarities. This is where the old industrial used to exist, and these are really cool restaurants and office spaces that have come up over here. And this has happened over the last 15 years. And that's what we see as the potential in the next 10 to 15 years, what could happen in some parts of North Miami. We're not talking about everywhere, but some parts of North Miami could start seeing these changes. This is Fruitvale Village in Oakland, California. This was what it was originally. Nice looking parking garage. You know that, right? And now it's become it's just a model example for mixed income housing and how you are going to be looking at having more residential close to transit and commercial. How do you actually let the transit dictate how it's going to happen? Everyone knows that, right? City Place. So We're not going to go a lot into this miracle mile. So this is what we had shown in the first workshop. I don't want to bore the people again who were there, the 5 or 6 people who attended the first one. So we're just going to go really quickly. The impetus of this project was the fact that the Tri-Rail Coastal Link is being thought of with the smart plan. It's going to come in, and the City Council, the CRA felt that there is a need for us to be proactive rather than be reactive. When the station comes in, we're like, oh, we need to start planning. Let's do it proactively and see where we want to be, so that when the station comes in, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 7 years from now, we do not know right now, because they're also doing their negotiations, whether it's going to be the FEC, whether it's going to be the Bright Line, whether it's going to be someone else, how is that going to happen? We should be ready so that the transit station can fit in. And that's the intent of this project. We're going to be looking at neighborhoods. We want to preserve the neighborhoods that exist as well. We're not talking about everything becoming high density. There are going to be some parcels that become high density, some properties, but not everything.
And it's not just the station. I mean, I've seen the stations here in South Florida, 2 towers and a bridge, and it's going to be more than that. And I think that one of the great things about a transit station is it encourages all these things to happen around it. So those towers and bridges will disappear with all the vertical things that go around it, but it still becomes an important element.
This is the study area. We are somewhere over here. It was a very interesting thing. We had our local consultants, SEPCO, working with us, and they were going door to door, giving flyers to everyone to come and attend this meeting. It was interesting. They told us that a lot of businesses and a lot of people on this street, 125th itself, did not know what the city hall was, where the city hall was. They knew the Community Planning and Development Department. They knew this building permits department, but the city hall, they're like, where is that? So that's what we got as a feedback, but it's what the people on the road are saying. However, this is where we are. The MoCA, everyone knew. So we have to work on putting up the brand for the city hall as well. Start thinking about how this whole thing changes. This is where we feel the 125th, 123rd, somewhere over here that the railroad station should be. Because considering that this is the access to the downtown, 125th Street, the Dixie Highway. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, that's much better.
You look good in this lower light, by the way.
I do? Thanks, David.
Yeah.
So you don't look good anyway.
I know,
So
I look the
6th
same.
Avenue. And then we've got Biscayne Boulevard. And that's what we're looking at. When we started the project, we were asked to look at just the 5-minute walk, which is the quarter mile. And we're like, no, we don't have enough to work with. We want to look at a larger area. We started looking at a 10-minute walk from the 125th, 123rd FEC railroad station. We're like, still we don't have a lot to look at over here. We're going to start looking at the 1-mile radius, where we start looking at destinations which actually come in, the city hall, museum, the police department. That's where you start looking at some sort of synergy that's created.
And then there's the high school and library.
Absolutely.
node and
So the 1 mile covers that as well.
Well, then you start connecting, and that's what transportation planning and connectivity is. You have node, 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 node. So now you have these things in space. How do you connect those? And those corridors then become the connecting tissue. How do you design those? What do they look like?
So this is how it's going to go. We're somewhere over here, the workshop number 2. We're going to be going with different things later on. Yeah, this is something you guys would recognize. This is something you might not know in terms of numbers. And there was a reason why we had Kevin Greiner on our team, because he's really good at what he does. That's one. But also he lives in Miami, and then he travels over here every time, and he can give us live traffic data as to how long did it take him to reach here. How long did it take you to reach here today?
Today wasn't as bad.
Okay.
What was it? Come on.
With 48, 49 minutes,
Which is how many miles you said? 15 miles?
21 miles.
Okay. Last time it was a lot more. So he's our radar over here as to how is it working. But we still need to understand that it is, the area that we're living in is around the top 20 for traffic congestion in the country. We're also talking about the average Miami commuter, which includes the entire Miami-Dade County, wastes more than a week of work annually. Come on, I mean, seriously, we don't want to do that. We want to get people to start living closer to work. We're also looking at, this is a map which shows about how car dependent are we? Wherever you start seeing the reds is where we're more car dependent. Where we are, in a way, we're somewhere in rarely walkable in North Miami, as you all know, but the rest of the area is all car dependent. So this is what we went through. What are the roadway deficiencies which are going to be there? Can we afford to have 98% of people driving for everyday traffic? And it's not something that we're just bringing up. The states realized it. Nationally, it's been realized that Florida, as a state, has been growing. These areas, Miami-Dade has been growing. And that's the reason why we're seeing all this investment in transit. Are all of you from here, like from Florida? How many of you are from Florida, like forever?
Wow, that's pretty high.
That's a lot of people. How many of you have been to New York? Of course, everyone. How many of you have been to Chicago? You lived there for 10 years. So, yeah. How many of you have been to Vancouver, Canada? 1 or 2 and 3. So, now, I did not own a car for 7 years. The last 7 years, I did not feel the need to own a car while I was living in Vancouver. Because I had car sharing, which I could just go out of my house. There was a car share thing. I had transit. I had bicycle sharing. I had all the modes available, and I had a good walking environment. And so that was one of the reasons why I did not want to. And that's the reason why we feel that the transit is the future. We're not talking about putting a Band-Aid on whatever's been happening in the past. This is about the future. We're trying to see what the future is going to hold for us. It's not just, let's just fix whatever needs to be fixed by quickly putting a Band-Aid on it. There are things which are happening at the Miami level, which we just wanted you guys to be aware of. This is the mobility choices, the cycling trails. There's been a huge increase in cyclists. I see a lot of cyclists in Boca. So many people riding bicycles in Boca. Boca, I realized very recently after moving over here, is one of the most expensive places to live in. I did not know that. I did not do my research as a resident or an urban planner. That damn, it is more expensive than Fort Lauderdale and Miami to live in Boca. The groceries are more expensive, as well as rental is more expensive over there. But I made my choice. I'll live with it for a year, and I'll move to Miami, North Miami after that.
Does anybody here commute by bicycle? Get to work? Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the city's sustainability coordinator. Please, just look at the back. She commutes on a bike.
Are there any roadway bikers in here? And I'm not talking about just casual biking, but I mean...
She does that, man.
Roadway bikers?
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference. I mean, I used to have a biking club that I had in St. Petersburg, Florida, which was one of the most dangerous. I had people push, pull, grab me while I was riding on my bicycle, and it's not always pleasant. However, it's a good way to travel because you get there quickly and efficiently, and it doesn't take any gas. So
we're talking about a lot of these things happening already in the area. How many of you know about Lime Bike? Lime Bike. How many of you have used the Lime Bike? Isn't it cool? Yeah, it is really cool. And that's already started, but we want to expand that. From this study, we're looking at making this a citywide change and not just happening at a small level.
If you're on a Lime Bike, you need to have some place to Lime Bike. So that's part of the challenge is creating that as well.
Yeah. The electric Zip cars, the Uber lifts, all those are coming in. We just have to start planning for those. Right now, if you go to the Fort Lauderdale airport versus the Miami airport, there's a big difference on how you get Uber. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. I do notice that Fort Lauderdale has a designated part where the Ubers are going to come, whereas Miami, you're like, I'm outside gate 26 if you want to come and get me. And then you're like, all right, you went to gate 24 or 28. I'm sorry, just reverse. So it needs to be organized better because this is a part of our life now. Uber and Lyfts are a part of our life. How many of you like taking Uber? Like, oh, everyone does. So it's a part of our life. We're looking at tactical urbanism as well. Now, that's a very planning way of saying things. Can you simplify
Explain.
it, please?
Yeah, because I like the word tactical.
I know.
And it's combined with planning, which is usually seen as sort of a socialist term. You know, we're very passive people as planners. Tactical urbanism is a form of planning. And what it is it's recapturing a street or recapturing an urban space, taking the cars out and putting the people back in. And one of the ideas we had was to do just that, recapture a street, add trees, add benches for a day or two, and make that a social, public, pedestrian space or a space you can bicycle in, and then also have activities associated with it. So reclaiming the urban environment.
Have you, any of you, experienced the whole pop-up tactical urban? You have? Where?
Chicago,
Sh-
right about.
All right. And you?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
cool.
Yeah,
So we've got some people who've experienced that. So that's something which we're trying to recreate over here as well and see how all of us, because that's a community-driven initiative. It doesn't happen just by the city or the CRA or someone saying we need to do it. It has to have people come together and do it. So we're trying to see if you all are interested, we'll do it in the next 1 month, one of the weekends, and get people together to do something like that. Oh, back here. So I know David doesn't agree with me on this, that in the next 10 years, we're going to see a lot more of these driverless cars. He thinks it's going to take longer than that.
Yeah. Well, I've never owned a car with an automatic transmission even. So yeah, I'm a driver.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, you never told me that. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, we do know that it is here. The driverless cars are here. We just want to be, again, the plan that we're working on right now with the city and the CRA is not about what's going to happen in the next 3 or 5 years only. It is going to be looking at 15 or 20 years down the line. If that's going to come in, you will be looking at having more on-street parking spaces available for sidewalks. The cars are going to go and park themselves, maybe 10 or 15 years from now, whatever it is. And then you just give them a call and say, hey, I'm out of my restaurant. I want to do that. I don't want to park on street. Come on, get me. All right, could happen. We're not saying that it's going to dictate how the plan's going to be, but what it is still going to do is when you're looking at an Uber, Lyft, or these technologies, the fact that technology is driving planning decisions around the world right now is something that we're working with and we're helping communities with, and we think North Miami needs to be at the forefront of it as well.
Yeah.
How do you know where to park? You should be able to not go round and round and figure out where the parking should be. You should be able to just quickly see it on your phone and say, hey, there are 20 spaces available. I'm going to go and park there. I do that still. Like when I come in the afternoon near the city hall, that parking lot is full. I don't know why people love that parking lot. Just opposite. How many of you know where the city hall is? You're here, so you know it. Yeah, so the parking lot just around the city hall is full all the time.
Does anybody here own a new Toyota or Nissan automobile? Do you have the automatic braking on it when you get too close? Okay. I rented one a few weeks ago, and I was going down the road, and all of a sudden the thing stops. What in the heck is that? So again, I don't like it. But I think what's intriguing about the autonomous vehicles isn't cars so much as it is large haul trucks, which to me seems like a much more reasonable solution. Not necessarily applicable to this, but a good idea.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about a lot of this again, and we just wanted you to see this, that when we're talking about, since you were not a part of it, some of you, the mobility, we're not talking about only the transit station. We're talking about walk, transit, intersections, bike, shared mobility roads, everything. It's mobility, how you move. When we talk about O, which is the open space, we're talking about the plazas, we're talking about the green spaces. This area we found within the within the 1 mile radius does not have a lot of parks and open spaces and recreation for anyone to enjoy. So that's another thing we're looking at. We're looking at the public facilities, the other open spaces, and creative placemaking. We'll get into the details. The development is not all about high density. We're looking at figuring out how we're going to keep the residential. What is the residential infill that's going to happen? We're going to talk about the major mixed-use developments, the TOD beyond 30 years. It might take a long time, but yes, TOD in the next, or development in the next 10 years. There is a lot that's happening. We've already talked about it. The Nomi Express is a great service. We're looking at that. We are also challenged with right-of-way in this city. I mean, it doesn't feel like Florida. A lot of times when I get into North Miami, it actually feels like Vancouver because there's not enough roadways. There's just 2 lanes on 125th, and that's what a progressive city like Vancouver had decided, that they're not going to let freeways come in or expand their roadways. They're going to live with congestion, and that's what it is. And that's what North Miami feels like a lot of times. Yeah. We don't have the right-of-way. So we have to be very careful on how we start planning where the traffic is going to go.
Well, when we designed 125th Street as an example, which will hopefully be under construction shortly, but the challenge there was we had to keep conveying the cars. You can't remove the car lanes because it's a major commuter route. So then we thought of other ways to do the more creative ways. So as a designer, you look for creative ways to get green space and pedestrian space into the streetscape, even with the right-of-way being narrow. And those are some challenges that we'll be looking at as well. How do you get these, what I call spaces between the buildings, become usable and pedestrian oriented?
All right, so I think all the people who did not attend the first one are up to speed on what we talked about. We're going to go into today. Oh.
That's you and me.
That's you and me, but yeah, all right. Do you want to explain your cool diagram?
I drew it. I have to explain it. Yeah.
All right, go for it.
The mobility hub is multidimensional to me. I'm a three-dimensional thinker. That's how I do things. I'm an urban planner, but I'm an urban designer by trade. So everything I do is three-dimensional. It's how I think. So we had a two-dimensional diagram, and I said, well, it really needs to be more than that. So if you look at the center, the mobility hub is the center point of this project. The center point is where all of these conveyance systems come together in one place, and then they're interconnected out. If you look at the top, you see the rail going straight through. That's one major corridor. And then the roadway system goes the other direction. So you have two major conveyance systems, railroad, roadway system. Around the perimeter, you also have connective tissue, and that's the bikes and pedestrians that connect through the roadway system. So you start feeling that, you start feeling it. And then you've got the other types of transit, higher density transit, parking lots, transit on the other end, and public realm facilities, which is TOD. And then around the perimeter, these, I can't get away from my podium, so I can't walk over there, but primary transit node is the highest density, the highest measure of conveyance systems for transportation.
I had to let him do that because he's been bothering me about it for the last 4 days that I made something really cool. So
and I'm the only one
I
that really
apologize for that, and he's super excited about it. But what we also did was a survey, which we did not share with you. We did a keypad polling thing. Everyone was really happy about it, and that's what we're going to try with you guys today later on. But here's what we heard. Preferred new development along FEC, 43% of the 30 people who were there. We're not going to pretend as if we had 1,000 people over there. There were 30 people. 43% of those said that they want to look at entertainment along the railroad, which is cafes, restaurants, breweries. 20% said, please preserve the single-family homes that are there as well. So we heard that. There is 16.7% that said we need the parks and public plazas. The preferred activities, 30.8% tied was on, again, visiting parks and green spaces, going to restaurants and eateries near 125th Street. So we know you guys like going out. You don't want to stay indoors. It's beautiful outside in Florida. It's not like Vancouver. Vancouver is pretty, but it's very gray. But you like to go out. And that's what we are trying to go towards, is figuring out ways on how do we create more public spaces. There were these challenges which kept on coming up: traffic congestion, lack of destinations, and deteriorating public infrastructure. That's what we heard last time. David?
And from the high priority amenities incentives to encourage use of, how do you encourage people to use transit? And we had a question there on that. Primary way of travel, obviously the overwhelming majority, 82%, is personal automobiles. So you go down I-95, one person per vehicle, and that's pretty typical. Only 7% are walking. Only 4% use car services like Uber. Only 4% carpool, and 4% use a bicycle. So that little wedge of the pie up on the corner is the part where we'd like to kind of wind around this way. And then, of course, bicycling, car service, bus makes up the other component of the transit.
So the interesting part was that when we asked people what would they do if they did not have a car, a lot of people said we will cycle.
Yep.
Give us the safer routes and we will cycle. That was the 30%. 25% said that.
Mm-hmm.
Car service remains the same. They want to have the Ubers and the Lyfts easily accessible, and 20% was the buses. We went through another exercise, what we call the pains and gains exercise, and where people identified what were the things that were painful for them in this area, and they wanted to see that go away. Lack of pocket parks, seating, playgrounds, lack of community centers, lack of jobs, and traffic congestion. Plus, spatially, they had located these things, and on 14th Avenue, there are no sidewalks, there are road closures. 125th and 123rd, the gateway or the entry is not, it's shabby, the train blocks the traffic, the congestion, the vacant lots, biking is dangerous along 125th, and the congestion which would happen around Dixie and 125th.
Yeah, the 125th intersection, particularly around the 11th, 12th Avenue, got very low marks. And we should have used a symbol for the poison bottle where that little X is, because it's not a very good intersection. It's not a great corridor right now.
The gains, people said that this is the last authentic community in the area. North Miami is real. This is what South Florida is. It's here. We've got the bare bones. We need to preserve what is there. They talked about the gains is we need to start looking at the public-private partnership. If the city or the CRA starts looking at that, that's something which is going to help us get into something else. More mixed use, police presence, and code enforcement. There was also talk about beautifying Biscayne, more traffic signal management that would happen along these areas, as well as looking at other uses for properties along railway lines.
And then preserving the neighborhoods was another one. The canopy
Another
trees
one.
along those streets.
One of the other things that we heard was that why are we focusing only on this? We need to connect it with the larger area, and we agree with that. So the city and the CRA have already made a lot of investment. What you see as these colorful map, this is 95, this is the railroad. What we're looking at is all the existing NOMI express routes. So the city and the CRA are trying their best to connect all parts of the city to this particular area. From the public transit perspective, what's missing is the sidewalks, the safer cycle routes that we're talking about. There are a lot of activities that have been started with the Northwest 7th Avenue, CRA, the Griffin Park, the Barry University. It goes on in a lot of these places. We've got the Solamia, the Costco wholesale. When we start looking at the mobility hub, we're looking at a larger area. We're not just talking about the 10-minute walking distance.
And one thing that we thought was overlooked was the importance of the university being close by to the transit hub as well.
So a transit node, this is anywhere, this is just a typical image. What we're trying to say is our parking lots and everything, it's about less is more. We need to start using whatever we have to do more, because we can't start building everywhere. A transit node is going to have an electric vehicle charging station, a car sharing system, a car rental, a long-term parking, a passenger zone for the public transit, which is the NOMI Express or the Metrobus, the bicycle sharing, as well as maybe package delivery in the near future, which David?
We talked, yeah, they sent me 2 left shoes, believe it or not. And Amazon has stations where you can put the package in and it disappears. They can also do that for delivery. Instead of using a post office box, this may be more convenient. Get off a bus, there it is.
So today's agenda, we're going to quickly go through how we, after we heard everything, how we're going to shape the design for the next phase of the North Miami Mobility Hub. We're going to do a quick activity on online polling. We wanted this to be interactive, so if anyone's planning on leaving, please don't leave. Just be with us. Don't leave. It's going to be fun. Just give us another 10 minutes. We'll go through this. And then activity 2 is the trade-offs TOD game. And he's leaving. You said 6:45. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thank you so much. These are the 10 guiding principles that we feel are going to be critical for how we see North Miami developing. And we're not talking about just development from tall buildings or anything perspective. We're talking about a balanced growth. We'll go through each of these, but just to give you a summary, it's 10 of these. David,
First and last mile connectivity means it's that last part of the puzzle. It's the bike, the pedestrian. How do you get from the station to your vehicle to your home?
Or how do you get to the downtown? It's not just a transit station. How do you get to the downtown? Downtown being the center, this downtown CRA, how are we going to be able to get to the downtown safely? That is something. Right now we feel that the city is lacking a center. North Miami does not have a center at all. What is it? Which is the center of North Miami? And that's what we feel that this is what we need to create with you all today, is to figure out where do we start focusing. And that's the critical part is going to be the first and last mile connectivity.
Creative placemaking. This is an interesting slide because it's taken a space and it's multidimensional. It's got a restaurant, it's got the bike parking, pedestrian oriented. It's a great space for people. This is what's lacking in North Miami. Now imagine this along 125th off to the side or in an enclave somewhere. This is a great idea and it draws people in, but you also need that connecting sidewalk system and bicycle system and car Ubering system to get in and out.
The economic catalyst. Kevin over here in our team is going to talk about that later, but what we're talking about, we've got the universities and the students over here. That's an economic catalyst which is untapped. We need to start looking at it. How do we take, there are around 7,000 students within a 20-minute walking distance of downtown. That's a lot, but we're not seeing them anywhere. I mean, we see them hanging out, but we're not able to tap onto them to get them to be a part of it. So we need to really get your ideas on how do we focus on that. There are things like where things are happening with Johnson & Wales. They have this student entrepreneurship program which exists. There is a research lab which is in Providence. It's about working and having those partnerships with FIU, with Johnson & Wales University. Just directing it at you right now, thanks to Tanya. So we just need to start getting the university to activate this area, and it's there. This is another thing. We're saying we are doing this in all size cities around the world, which is smart technologies. And one of the things that we heard, which did not show up on the map, was there is somewhat a lack of enforcement and monitoring in the North Miami city, which people told us. And this is a tool that we're working on, and let's see if it works, which is the Smart City platform, where you have a dashboard which is available to the citizens, which is going to help you monitor what's happening. We need to start, every one of you, I mean, data has always been a problem, but every one of us is a data sensor today with all the smartphones that we have. We are a data sensor. And we're doing that in cities all around the world, where people take pictures of a pothole and send it over. There's a KnowMe app. How many of you know about the KnowMe app? How many of you like it? 1.5. It's okay. All right. So that's one app. There is another transit app, which the Miami-Dade County and the city is sort of working on someday. And that happens at the county level. So what we're talking about is let's create one dashboard where all these apps come together, and it's one application available to the citizens to start seeing where parking should be available. This was another comment that we got from one of the participants. I do not remember who, I apologize, but if they're in the audience, please raise your hand. They were talking about measuring how parking can happen in downtown. We need to start measuring that and letting everyone know where that's happening. So we're talking about coming up with a trip planner, a resident engagement app. What we're doing right now, we get around 30, 35 people. We want to have more people chime in, give us more input. And how do we do that? Maybe online and offline. So this is another resident engagement app that we're saying that needs to be created for the future for the city. waste collection, everything else can get on this platform depending on how you define what are the needs.
And ordering lunch.
And ordering lunch, all right.
Child-friendly neighborhoods. This is one of my favorite. How do you create spaces that are safe for children, and how do you create an environment where kids can get from school to home safely? And it means also creating outdoor spaces for families to be entertained and do things. And that's one of the things we're looking at. If we are looking at a mobility hub, it's public spaces, but not just space between the buildings, but we will create plaza space, open space for activities. It's not just going to be buildings. We consider these program spaces. I like the kids on the trampolines in the street. That's very cool.
That's a pretty cool thing, and that's in Europe, in Copenhagen. Resilient community.
And resilient communities is really about being environmentally sensitive. One of the things we talked about at the first meeting was the global climate change, global warming, that some people believe in, some people don't. Unfortunately, it is real. And part of that, too, is where do you build? Where do you create these new spaces? If you're worried about some kind of change in the environment, you need to make sure that whatever future development you do is in an area that's going to be sustainable, it's going to be energy efficient, and it works well. And now, of course, the trend is to urban gardening, and solar technology has really taken a huge leap. And you see a parking garage here that's fired up by solar panels to light it and create the electrical components.
Neighborhood preservation is the seventh, and we've talked about that. We do believe that the neighborhoods today need to be preserved. We're not talking about modifying that with the new development that's coming in completely. It's going to be at strategic locations, which is the next, which is the optimized densification. This is one of the most successful train station and rail-oriented developments in the country, which is in Arlington, Virginia, where you start looking at, these are all your residential single-family neighborhoods. They remain. What you want to do is invest and direct growth in those areas which can actually take the capacity. We're not talking about it going everywhere else, but where, from an infrastructure perspective, the capacities exist.
Yeah.
It's not about the entire station changing.
A lot of it's common sense. The transect in planning terms is, if you've got roads and you've got buildings and you've got other, it just makes sense. It's just practical.
I'm going to let Kevin come and talk about this real quick. He's really cool. All the economic stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever you like.
I didn't do any cool diagrams, so you'll just have to bear with me. I'm sure you could. Kind of three issues. We looked at strengths and weaknesses of North Miami, and the strengths are actually surprising and considerable. After all of our research, there's really kind of four things that boil down in my mind as key to defining strategies in the future to actually implement all this. One is that North Miami is, as Bankam already says, one of the most authentic communities in Miami-Dade. It really is. It's got an urban and urbane feel that really you don't have in the whole rest of the county. The downside of its density and the way it's built out now, you don't have a lot of land left. So that in reality, how North Miami handles its future mobility and all modes, not just the train, but as Bankam said, across all modes, is going to be one of the most important strategies that continues to grow or change North Miami's economy. It's a major economic development strategy, just how you handle mobility in the future, how people move around inside North Miami, and how North Miami connects to the rest of the region. Second major issue, there's a surprising number of high-paying jobs that are in North Miami. 53% of the businesses in North Miami are in industries that pay above the county median wage. Very significant. The third issue, and it's really very significant, there's a mismatch between the people that live in, the employed residents that live in North Miami and where they work. Only 6% of people who are employed full-time who live in North Miami work in North Miami. That's a major issue. That means that's got a number of built-in issues into it. One is there's lots of high-paying, good jobs in a lot of legal, healthcare, medical offices, professional services in North Miami. So it means your residents aren't taking those jobs in North Miami. They're leaving every day. So that's an opportunity missed in terms of residents that live here. It's also a transportation problem. It means you're putting more people in cars on the road every day than you need to. So you're adding to congestion by not providing more or actually connecting more people who live here to the jobs that are here. It's also income lost. The other mismatch, and this is the last major issue, is that wages are generally lower for residents. And what happens is they're taking jobs that are lower paying, but outside of North Miami. So building opportunity to connect to those jobs, not only here physically, but also providing education training is an important part of that strategy, and actually getting people into jobs that here. Believe me, it's much easier to have higher quality jobs where you live in this city than to try and have to rebuild them. That's a very difficult proposition, is trying to add new employment, significant new employment, and add them in higher paying jobs is very difficult. So you're already partway through that problem. It's making that connection. Mobility is the fiber that's really going to do that for you. So if we look at really what we're suggesting is really these are now just kind of draft strategies for your consideration. We've broken them first into general economic development strategies. This is with or without transit development, with or without other mobility suggestions. One is that you really do need to, and this is all communities need to do, is target their high wage, high skill employment. Often there's a lot of emphasis on kind of entry-level jobs, which are important, but really the drivers of the local economy is focusing on continuing to grow those high-wage, high-skill sectors. And there are lots of ways you can do that. It doesn't mean throwing lots of money at it necessarily, but through administrative means, land use, and how you connect. How you connect is actually very important. I'll talk about that later. Second is supporting small business growth. North Miami, like Miami in general, is a community of small businesses. We're very much more dependent on small businesses, and these are 10 employees and less firms than the rest of the country. Continuing to support and grow small businesses is very important. Again, connectedness, mobility is a great cost offset for a small business. If you make it cheaper for a small business to locate in North Miami because it's paying less in transportation costs, or better yet, its employees are paying less in transportation costs, that in itself is a subsidy. And it doesn't have to cost millions and millions. Third is work shift. This is a major trend. The way that we work and where we work is already changed very dramatically and is continuing to change even more. 25% of all workers in the United States now work a portion, some of them all, but a significant portion of their work week at home. 35% up to 40% depending on the profession, and it generally goes up with skill and wages. So people in even higher income, higher skilled jobs work even more out of their homes. That's a dramatic difference in how we work. That also has implications on how you incentivize work. It has how you develop your communities, placemaking, providing services. And again, that's where connectedness, mobility, transportation plays a major issue. Work shifting now is also a major strategy of large companies. Dell probably being one of the leaders. Dell now wants, by 2020, 75% of its workforce working from home. They don't want to do that, pay for that 1 week of commuting time Bonkum talked about. They don't want to be paying their workers to be sitting in cars in traffic. They'd rather have them working. They're actually moving their workforce out of the house. Microsoft, all the large computing companies, law firms, accounting firms. In fact, Miami is now the metro area, which is all 3 counties, now has a greater percentage of its office space as co-working space than any other metro in the world. We're the leader in co-working space. And one of the reasons is so many employers don't want to pay. It's small businesses on one side driving it, but large employers are also moving their employees closer to where they live. They're not in the car. They're in workspace that's cheaper and more affordable. They don't want to build the AAA class tower anymore. So this whole concept of work shifting is very dramatic. It's something that North Miami can do to actually help grow its jobs base. You do it because of the fabric that you have here. But again, transportation plays a big part of that, both on the side of taking people out of a car, work shifting, in fact, in North Miami, may be one of the smartest and cheapest ways to relieve some of your congestion problem. Rather than trying to add asphalt, as Malcolm said, or very expensive types of alternatives, by work shifting, you don't need to get in a car anymore. So you're taking people right off the road, you're starting to relieve congestion. And it's the way we prefer to work anyway. The very latest surveys now, 3 years running, large surveys of workers from across the country. If given the choice, their actually preferred commuting choice is telecommuting. Not even a train, not even cars, not even Ubers. They'd rather just work at home. That's now the preferred choice for people to commute to work, is to telecommute and never leave their home. So this, where we work, is having dramatic differences because of the fabric you have here, though. It's hard to sell working at home in a standard single-family, very suburban neighborhood where you can't walk, you can't go anywhere. However, in North Miami, which is much more dense, has much more fabric, has much more stuff that is walkable, it's an ideal location for these types of work shift strategies. So major part of your mobility question right there.
Kevin, real quick.
Yes.
How many of you work from home today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes you work sometimes from home. So yeah, so even out of the 20 people, we at least have 5 people who are working out of home. I think one of the things that we would like you to help us with in the next workshop that we're going to be doing right now is telling us what are the kind of incentives that is going to help reduce the traffic congestion, reduce the traffic time that we're talking about. Sorry, I just had to ask.
No, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
And it's, you're representative of the nation's workforce. Simple things like negotiating a really good high-speed gigabit internet connection for the city can have dramatic impacts. It's a dramatic subsidy. If you're getting low-cost, high-speed internet, great way to support small businesses, a great way to support people who are working at other places. The other is not just from the top down. I talked about supporting small businesses, focusing on targeted industries, which we will recommend as part of the final study. But it's really growing opportunity from underneath as well. Across Florida, unfortunately, we're seeing the state strip away lots of incentives for small business creation. We're seeing it harder and harder for kids to finish college. One of the things that localities, like it or not, are going to have to be involved and begin to lead on is providing opportunity for their residents to take these jobs. North Miami is a perfect example. You have a really nice supply of very interesting firms doing very interesting things and paying very good wages. Problem is your residents aren't taking advantage of those jobs. Too many are leaving. In fact, it's 95% of them are taking jobs outside of North Miami, providing opportunity from the bottom up, so growing education opportunity through very simple means. Worker retraining, absolutely key. So building your opportunity from the bottom up so that residents here can start to take advantage of the jobs you already have. A major, simple, but very effective strategy to start as a long-term economic development strategy. The last is this housing jobs connection. And I talked about working from home. You need to start thinking about where you live, and how housing is organized as a central economic development proposition. It's not about living here and commuting someplace else anymore. That's really an old and becoming increasingly outdated model of designing cities. Right now, how you develop housing, if you develop it intelligently, look to the future just a little bit, it's actually a major economic development strategy. Not just because more people are working in the home, but as it turns out, about 60% of all new jobs are created in a home. And what's really interesting, a large percentage of new jobs at new companies started in firms, even after they start hiring employees, stay in homes. So residences are very different than they used to be in terms of job creation, job preservation, job retention. Even if you work for another company or a big company, more and more the chances are you're going to be spending more time working from home, even if you work for somebody else. So thinking about housing very differently as a job strategy is real key to the future here in North Miami. We also looked then at a second set of strategies we're calling more rail and TOD specific. These are the general economic development strategies these are regardless of how you handle mobility, but I think necessary and could have a real positive impact on North Miami's future in terms of TOD specific strategies. As I said, I think a significantly well-planned rail opportunity in North Miami is very key to its future and a tremendous opportunity. Because what it does is it leverages all types of other economic development, and not just real estate, and it doesn't mean steel and glass towers, but it is a way to connect companies, workers, residents to the rest of the region efficiently, quickly, and that is increasingly becoming a major economic advantage in this world, and especially in this county that is so badly congested. Lots of companies from outside the region are now beginning to decline opening locations in Miami-Dade just because they look at commute times. It's about 45 minutes average across the county. It gets a lot longer when you live out in the fringes, West Kendall out there. This is a real economic issue. So how you handle looking at your rail and TOD opportunity is a major, major opportunity to leverage new employment, new job creation, new business creation is the way to frame this. Structuring it that way is really important. Second is, right now, the city's land uses and its projected land uses in the future land use maps going into the future, in order to leverage this rail opportunity that you have, and it is considerable, you're going to have to rethink how you handle land uses, especially along the rail line. Right now, it's legacy properties that were industrial. Some have slipped into salvage yards and storage, which is the gateway drug to self-storage properties. And those really don't support rail use. Rail works best. And rail works best when you, as Bonkum said, it's really that first mile connection. So density around your rail station is critical to making the rail work itself. That's how you drive ridership. So you need to rethink that corridor, which will have economic benefits, not in terms of just supporting rail and making it more attractive, but it will make living in North Miami much more attractive. You're one of the few communities that has this real opportunity. There are less than 5 that I've worked with and can think with in the entire county that really have an opportunity at the scale you do. My hometown of South Miami is one of them because we already have a lot of development around a major rail station. But you've got a major rail opportunity with land around it that could be repurposed to really serve that rail and really drive a lot of new economic activity around it. Not many other communities have this kind of so leveraging that is critical. You may have to think about rezoning and upzoning those properties, especially along the rail. It's a legacy of old manufacturing along the rail. Also, it's really critical to think that this does and develop opportunities. The city needs to position itself. This doesn't need to be a massive public investment. In fact, across the rest of the country, what you see, the smartest TOD strategies are actually public-private partnerships or even fully privately developed, because the private development community has taken notice and now understands the highest, actually most preferred properties among millennials and actually among Silverset are those near, I'm pointing at myself too.
He's pointing at you.
I'm pointing at me as well, sorry. But among generation 55 and older, are actually demanding the same things that millennials are. Walkability, prefer not to own a car, moving out of ownership and into rental, downsizing, and they want to be near easy commutes. They want to be near a mix of transportation modes. That is now being reflected in private development across the country. So you're not talking about the inevitability of a large public investment in this. Done smart, it could either be a small contribution or purely privately developed. You've got to prepare for that now, though. Fourth strategy is that the city will need to lead on this. The city will need to take a lead, and I'm not talking about necessarily start writing checks and spending lots of money, but making its strategic moves now. As Bonkum, I think, has very accurately said, this is a plan that looks 15 or so years into the future. The major supportive station investment might not be for another 6 or 7 years. I would think you're getting a lot of interest even sooner, but it's an effort. A few things you need to do though right now to prepare for it. One I mentioned is zoning, starting to change your zoning, setting the stage for that opportunity. The major, I guess, financial component now is the city needs to look at owning some land. The way to control what kind of development is going to happen, especially along the corridors, you need to own some land to dictate those terms. And I'm working with a number of cities right now who are doing exactly in the middle of that. South Miami's one of them. Dania Beach is now looking at that opportunity as well. They're vying for a rail station. They already own land though. And that is the best way that the city does two things. Dictates not only the type of development so that it's a real benefit to the city, and that's how you also make trades to make sure that much of it is privately financed as possible. So picking those key strategic properties and investing in owning some land right now where preferred activity is going to happen, I think is the one single most important investment to make. And that doesn't need to be a huge investment either. That's buying really underutilized property at the moment. That's an advantage that you do have. So that's
all right.
9 quick strategies.
I am looking at my watch and it is just 45 minutes. I don't want it to be where you guys don't talk. So it's 7:15. We have 45 more minutes. This is the last one, quick win from talking to doing. I'm not going to explain this. Just please look at the image. No talking. We need to start doing some real projects. That's what the city needs as well. All right. How many of you have this ready on your smartphone? Come on. Let's do it. Everyone, just get on the smartphone. This is the website, polev.com. Gonna have some fun. All right, do you see this question on your phone? Even if you don't, how many of you do not have a smartphone? 1, 2, 3. All right, 4. We're gonna take you into account in the calculation. So do you see that on your phone? All right, this is just a practice question so that you guys get used to it. This is not a real question. Which city is this? What do you think? New York, Hong Kong, Miami, Tokyo. On your phone, just select that. Come on. So we have 22 results. So 22 people have given a result for this. Three. Five. All right. This is not working for me. Okay, so we'd have to just see this. This is not working. That's the problem. It's not working suddenly. But we'll try that once more. Do you see the next question? No. I'll have to see this one.
Ah, no?
It's doing something, but I'm gonna try it once more. That's why the practice question was there. And you are?
Yeah, we're already in the second question.
Just trying to see why the results are not coming in. Okay. So this is going to tell us. Let's do the second question. The first question, it was a practice question. This is also a practice question. That was Hong Kong. All right? How many of you got that right? All right, Hong Kong, Hong Kong, Hong Kong. So that's just like 10%. We're going to go back to the basics. This digital thing is not working right now, but still.
Yeah.
So second one. All right, so in this, you just have to use your smartphone to move it in terms of the preference. Just rank in order of the preference. So the 3 lines that you see over there.
Do you believe that smart cars are the cars of the future?
I'm sorry?
Smart cars are the cars of the future?
I don't know.
There you go.
I don't believe in cars. I want smart transit. So this is what the results are showing us, that the first is that one and the second and the third. That's how all of us have looked at that. The next question. Are you hitting the submit response button after that? Okay, let's do this. This is fun. So once you select it, you have to hit the submit response. All right? We're going to start it once more. The only reason we're doing it is because we're being very smart with our finances. Last time when we did that with the keypad polling, we spent $2,000 on it. This is $65. So just be patient, and so that we can do it again and again and again. That's the intent.
Yeah.
All right, let's start this once more.
And now it went too fast. We went 1, 2.
Okay, let's do it one by one. Question 1. Question 1. Which city is this? I said Hong Kong, so please everyone select the second one. And the clear last response is done. Is it working? Oh, come on. Sorry, David. Okay. So wider sidewalk or more on-street parking? That's the choice. Are you able to submit in this? All right, let's see that now. All right, this is where it's going. 93%, 7%. That was just 100%. So let's see how it changes. 94, 6. This is like real-time data collection now. So what you have in the upper image is wider sidewalks, or you would have more on-street parking. That's the trade-off we're dealing with. When we've got streets like North Miami, it's really hard to have both, on-street parking and wide sidewalks. So what would you like to select? Wide sidewalks, on-street parking goes in some of the streets. I'm not saying all streets, but that's what we're looking at. All right. So 91% want wider sidewalk. Next one. Shared pedestrian and cyclist path or dedicated walkway with shadows. It's not come up yet? All right, we'll do this. It will come up now. Sorry about that, and thank you for working with me on this. This is the first time I'm doing it. The last time I did that was last week in Ivory Coast, and it was working really well. Somehow it's not working over here, but it wasn't that complicated. All right, 75%, 40%, 50%, 50, 50, 44, 50, 42, 58. All right, David, your question.
A sharrow is a bicycle lane shared with a vehicular lane.
This is what we're talking about. Again, we knew these questions would come in. This is what we're talking about as a shadow.
In theory, bicycles have the right of way. But a car weighs over 2,000 pounds.
This is shared pedestrian and cyclist path, which is segregated, and this is shadows. And it's good that the reason why we put this in is because as planners and engineers and landscape architects, we like to throw these words out and the community doesn't understand it. But now you do. Shadows is what you have on the right. All right, shared pedestrian and cyclist path wins. Absolutely, that's another one that's going to come up. These are, because not all streets can have that. When you're looking at a smaller street, like a residential street, we can only fit in so much when it gets to it. When you have a very limited right of way, how do you put all the modes in? So this is one of those kind of examples. But there's going to be another one, exactly what you said. Next slide, which we're going to go to. All right, this is the next one. And on your phone, you're going to have more space for cars or transit priority lanes. For those people who don't have this, this is what we're talking about. Transit priority lanes means having a dedicated bus transit lane. That's the priority we're giving to public transit. This is what you have, more space for cars, because there's no bus only lane over here. The red that you see is for bus only. There's still 2 lanes that are kept over here. Essentially what you're going to have, this car is going to be over here, this car is going to be here, and this becomes bus only lane. We just need to know what is the community's preference right now. That's what we're doing. And the results go up to, it changed, 40, 60, 58, 42. Come on, stop. All right, bus transit lanes, priority lanes is what we're talking about. Maybe. There's some people still playing with it. All right, so this is the final verdict, 56-44. Oh no, it is not the final verdict. It's 50-50. Damn.
So the commuters in the room.
Oh no, it's 56-44. It's not done yet, David.
The commuters are late to vote. That's what it is.
No, the people are just still deciding. They're not able to. But now we're still winning with the bus transit. This question ends now. All right? Oh, wait. 52-48. I'm going to change this now. All right, 54-46. It ends. All right, so here's what we have. Now, what you would have to do, this is 129th Street, one of the sections of that. We would like you to rank that in your order of preference. What you have over here is, again, the cycle sharing, like you were mentioning. Then you're going to have the shadows over here, which come in, as well as looking at having, I think these two turned out to be the same, right?
One has like pervious pavers and the other
Yeah.
doesn't.
Okay, on your phone that shows. So
Yeah.
one has pervious pavers. Sorry, go ahead.
Why 129th instead of 131st?
No, it's just an example right now. You can call it 131st also. It was just the photo that we took. It could be anything, 131st. If you want to call this 131st, it's yours.
Yeah.
131st, 129th, or 131st. It's just about whether you want it to be traffic calmed with the pavers, do you want the shadows to be there, or would you like to have the bikes on the side with the sidewalks?
I mean, the problem is that those streets are not a problem because they have very little traffic.
Well, and there's a range of,
Nothing like some side street where there's one car every hour or
Sure.
those are not
The reason why we took 129th was also because we do feel that there needs to be some slower traffic streets which can accommodate bicycles safely. It is going to be also on the 125th. It's not an either or situation, it's and. When we do the next exercise, you would see the entire network that we're proposing, which you would be telling us this is not working. We need it on 131st as well. We need it on 129th. This is just to see the final, because a lot of times we see on 125th we have shadows that don't work. On the residential street, would that work or not? That's just an opinion. And so what we see is, it is working. This is the first, second, third, and the fourth. All right. It's changing.
that one is kind of hard to see, the top two.
On this it is,
Yeah.
but so it's the B. Okay. Next question. Creating open streets. Does that come on your phone now? Again, if you could please rank it for us, and I'm going to make it bigger on the other one, which is this, the A, B, C, D. The first one that you see still has some cars on it, but it's still giving a lot more space for the pedestrians. B is where you are looking at an intersection which is significantly calmed by change in pavers, but it still has an intersection in it. The cars are going to be a part of it. The C is where you're looking at pretty much a transit mall, pedestrian mall, which is there. So is the D, is going to be retail with pedestrian mall. So if you could just create these open streets as to which one do you like.
To be clear, D would be very limited in terms of transit bus.
And that would be for where, like Dixie Highway or what street are we talking, what kind of street are we talking?
We could do it for 8th, for example, 8th Avenue or Dixie if you would like to. But again, this is right now, we would have to in the next phase, which is the next exercise in the next 10 minutes, you would be identifying where these streets should be.
And they may
What
be
do you
new
think?
There may be new streets too within the mobility hub. So we need to know exactly what types of streets we're going to be designing or proposing in those areas.
All right, so we do have, we have C as the first ranked right now.
And there's a little bit of sleight of hand when you have two, the slides are night, two, the slides are day. So
All right, the next one, changing parking, on-street parking. Do you see that on your screen now? Here's what we're talking about, and this is another one of those ideas where on-street parking, taking two cars away, trying to create some spots for bicycle parking, for example, in C. In A, we're looking at it becoming a small seating plaza. In B,
transit.
B is pretty cool though. B is a bus stop with a library in it, which was taken from the parking plazas. Can anyone guess where that is? B? Yeah, it says Jurong Central. That gives it away somewhere. It's Singapore. That's C. B is Singapore, where one of the parking spaces was taken and a bus stop with a library for children was created in it. And it's real. I mean, we're not doing photoshopping on it. This is real on ground. And the D is where you see somewhat like a complete streets thing where you have a bicycle track which is segregated and dedicated with something in between, which is a plaza. You've got too many things happening. You've got a crosswalk, but that's how you would have to deal with limited right-of-ways, which is a one-way street, though.
Yeah, and the trend now might not just be seating, but there may be a median with landscaping on it, for example. But the concept is to separate the bicycle lane from the traffic lane by a median, some kind of barrier.
All right, so majority of the people do like that parklet, which changed to the bus stop now, which changed to the parklet. With the parklet plaza. So we have a tie between the parklet plaza and the bus stop.
No.
No. The bus stop. Oh, come on. Whoever is that person, please stop choosing now. That's it. It's done. It's done. Please select and do not clear the last selected, please. Please. All right. So both of them win. We're going to create library bus stops. With parklets. All right. This goes into transforming surface parking lots. And these are all that we're seeing. In North Miami, there's a lot of parking lots which exist. This is where you've got food trucks coming in. That's one. And we're not talking about development coming in directly over here. This is just small changes that could come in to activate it. This is the first is the food trucks. The second is where you start having solar panels on all this. The third is when you start creating some little pocket parks, play areas in parking lots. The parking's still there. You're not taking the parking away, but just making it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. The fourth is what it is.
Let me ask you a question. Why aren't we looking at beautiful parking garages located throughout the city to, like I see on Miami Beach, beautiful landscape garages that give you more open space?
Absolutely.
Or pedestal parking like we try to get.
So that's the thing that you would like to see is get the parking lots into parking garages.
Exactly, but make them things of beauty where you have more open space and narrow the footprint. Right now, when you have ground parking, you have a massive concrete out there, whereas you narrow the space, go high, make it picturesque, put a rooftop garden on there, and make it enhancing where you can get the cars off the street.
Yeah.
I'm on the planning commission, and I've been trying to get this through, like, let's get some pedestal parking and raise the height of the building and make it nice. I see this up in Aventura, I see it all over the city here, or the county, and here we're still playing around with ground parking, which is nonsensical.
All right. That is one view. Not all the parking lots are going to be parking garages, is what we're looking at.
Exactly, but we don't have that many parking lots in the city. I mean, we have a few downtown, but
Yeah, so that's what we're focusing on is the downtown parking lots.
Let me frame it this way, too. It's a transition, too. I mean, redevelopment is a long-term process. As an example, when we were working on St. Petersburg, Florida back in 91 or 92, and we were drawing wonderful pictures, there were a lot of surface parking lots. They transitioned from being just parking lots to more like what you see here. And now there's 2 parking garages on either end, and both of them have rooftop gardens. Both of them have mixed-use space and have retail on the first floor. So we view this parking lot as kind of an interim step, if you will. If we're going to develop a large area, some of these parking lots are going to be there for a while. So we'd like to figure out ways to make them a little bit more functional from a pedestrian point of view before the parking garages do come.
And we do agree with you. I will just.
Yeah, we do stackers, vertical parking,
Mm-hmm.
and we actually put in OD or Brightline, used almost 600 lifts, and it provides the long-term parking in a smaller, dense area, where you can decrease your parking area, but you're vertically parking.
Absolutely.
And that's
We totally agree with that.
Yeah.
We totally agree with that going on. But as David said, not all parking lots are going to be converted within the same time frame. What happens to those others? We would have some strategic locations where you are, because that becomes a part of the mixed-use parking that you're talking about as well.
and you're looking at a
this city, we've been waiting since 1970 to convert things. It's just like.
and one of the things that the parking garages need too is they need people and density, and that's another part of the puzzle.
All right. So just to move on, and we'll come back to that, is the development. Again, the new question on your phone. Is this higher, or are both similar? Easy question. Yeah, it's hard to decide sometimes. Because a lot of times the density is a matter of perception. And that's what we were trying to get with on this slide. When the community hears the word development and density are synonymous with each other, but how you design it is where the reality hits
Some
the ground.
communities refer to it as the D word. It's the D word, density. And density isn't a bad thing. Density is actually a good thing.
So, both have similar density, 60%. That's the right answer, though, just for the record. That is the right answer. Both of them. It's just going vertical versus horizontal. Oh, no, it changes. Oh, no, you can't change it. I stopped at 60%, and that's where it stops. No, it's done. All right. This is about the type of rail and development. This is what we're looking at. As the first is where you've got the tri-rail, you've got a system which is an isolated station. This is more like a multimodal hub that you're trying to create near the station where different modes come in. You've got a plaza. And then this is where, again, the bus comes in, but the station is all covered. But all of these, except this, is more related to isolated stations. What we're talking about right now, what FEC has in their tri-rail has in their plan is a park and ride lot. And we're saying no, park and ride lot is not the ultimate use of that particular station for us. We need to see it more as a mixed-use development if that can come in, which would require land assemblage. But we need your input on it as well. What would you think? What is going to happen? So just preferences over there. Again, as it relates to North Miami, it's going to be in another 5 minutes. You're going to be sitting on your maps and you're going to tell us what do you think, where is that station location going to be? It's all undecided right now. It's undetermined. Yes, please.
Okay, so that monster,
Which monster?
that monster skyscraper,
A, B, or?
yeah, that's not part of the deal, is it?
No, it's not part of the deal. No, that is not. This is a part of the deal. It's the character of the station that you're talking about. Old Spanish, little contemporary, very contemporary. That's what we're talking about. All right. We do want to be London. That was London. B was London, so we want to be that. We get it. That's fine. That will be a part of our architectural guidelines that we're going to be looking at contemporary architecture as well.
Right.
Next question. This is easy. What type of economic activities would you like to see in North Miami? Just tell us. Whatever is your preference, just pick one. Preference. Local retail, healthcare, future technologies, education. Yeah, everyone for sure, but for us to start studying, what do you think is the future of North Miami right now? What would you like us to start focusing on? It's going to be all of them. First, second, third, fourth for sure. But what is the main driver, the economic driver, as you would say, as Kevin was trying to put it? So future technologies, Kevin, we'd have to start looking into that. What is the thing? That's the word on the street. Future technologies is what we need to start looking at. Next is local retail. Third is education. And fourth is healthcare. Nobody's changing that now. And that's it. We're done. I think we're done. This was the World Bank TOD. We're done. I apologize if this was a little complicated. We're trying our best to
But
save
it was only
money.
$65.
It was only $65, and we interacted with each other a lot more than the last one. So we'll keep doing this, and we'll get it right. Now, the next thing that we're going to do